Jason Adkins, and this is Shawn Peterson, and we're here with this week's analysis of what's going on in St. Paul, all from a Catholic perspective. Shawn, the legislative deadlines are coming up for pieces of legislation if they're going to make it through the legislative process and continue to move forward. We know that the next legislative deadline is coming up at the end of this week, so it's an important week in terms of getting those bills and pieces of legislation moving forward as we get toward the end of session on May 22nd. One of the principal vehicles by which legislators make law and policy are what are called Omnibus Bills. Shawn, what is an Omnibus Bill?
Jason, Omnibus Bills are really just supersized bills. They're the big bills that members of the House and Senate put together, and they're in every issue of the state: education, transportation, agriculture. The tax bill is an omnibus bill, and that's basically, there's omnibus policy and omnibus finance bills. And the omnibus finance bills are really where the budget outlooks for the House and Senate are put together. All the ideas kind of come together. They're baked into one bill, and then each body passes those bills separately, and then they kind of see what they can agree on, and then what gets sent to the governor. So, but they're anywhere from 150 pages to 900 pages, very complex bills.
So a piece of legislation can travel individually through both houses of our state legislature and then go to the governor, or be packaged as part of one of these broader omnibus bills. And there's either spending omnibus bills and there's policy omnibus bills, right?
Yep, absolutely. And oftentimes what they'll do is, to avoid passing 800 bills, they'll bring a lot of bills into committee. Let's say the agriculture committee, for example. Members will bring policies dealing with agriculture and environment issues to that committee, and then they'll do what they call lay them over for inclusion. So they'll hear the bill in committee, so it gets a full hearing in front of the public, and the public can testify on them. And then the chair will lay them on the table, and then when he or she puts their bill together, they'll take those pieces that they like, and they'll basically put them into one big bill, and then pass that bill through other various committees, Ways and Means, the Rules Committee, and then they go to the floor for a full vote.
And omnibus bills can be particularly helpful when legislators are crafting a state budget, right? Because they'll try to create targets for specific issue areas like health and human services or education. They'll lump all the pieces of legislation into that one bill with a targeted budget amount and see what they can fit into that specific budget area. So omnibus bills are particularly helpful in that regard in the process of lawmaking, just to simplify things from a legislative standpoint. Now, our legislators and our governor are working together to craft a state budget. They're about $1 billion apart. And
just $1 billion.
Just $1 billion. One governor is proposing $46 billion. Our legislature, at least the House, proposing $45 billion in spending. Right now, though, the legislators in the House and the Senate are putting together their omnibus bills to pass those and then get those to the governor to craft an overall budget. But one of the big ones that's really on the front burner right now is the Omnibus Tax Bill. What's going on with that?
So the Omnibus Tax Bill, actually in the House, will be heard tomorrow. That's House File 4. And then the Senate tax bill is due to be released today, and that'll give people an idea. Actually, it was released in committee today, but then tomorrow they'll do what they call a markup, and they'll go through the bill and take testimony. But yes, so House File 4 is the House tax bill, and that's Representative Greg Davids is the chair of that committee. He put that bill together. And there's some things in there that we have advocated for, and there were some things that we would have hoped were in there that didn't make it. Some of the really positive things that made in there are Opportunity Scholarship Tax Credit, which we've talked about on the show before, and which is on our bill tracker. This is the bill that would give individuals the opportunity to donate to a nonprofit foundation to give scholarships for kids of low-income and middle-income families to attend the school of their choice. That's great. We're really excited that that's in the House tax bill. Also, our beginning farmer tax credit that we've talked about as well, that also made it into the House tax bill. So we're excited about that. As with every bill at the legislature, these big, huge bills, there were some things that we felt it missed the mark a little bit. And one of those things was the working family tax credit. The working family tax credit was not included on the House side. So we'll see what it looks like in the Senate side.
And that working family tax credit is especially important for families trying to build that ladder out of poverty, to gain a foothold and build assets and really encourage work. That's one of the most important
Yeah.
things we can do in terms of our policies to fight poverty is encourage work, encourage families. And so that's really a missed opportunity to not have that as part of the tax bill. Is there any hope that that can be included perhaps in future versions of the tax bill down the road?
Oh, certainly. Things are never done at the legislature until, as we say, May 22nd, when the last gavel hits the block. So there's always opportunities to amend these things. What they'll do, just process-wise, Jason, for our viewers that might not know all the insides of the legislature. So the House will pass an omnibus bill, a tax bill. The Senate will pass one off their House floor. And then they'll go and they'll basically lay them side by side, and they'll see what is the same and what's different. If there's differences, which there will be, then they go to what we call a conference committee. And that conference committee is made up of senators and House members that were on the tax committee or that voted for the tax bill. And they'll sit in a room for days or weeks, and they'll try to negotiate points, and they'll give and take a little bit. And then that'll be the final product that goes to the governor.
And so just because a good piece of legislation like the Opportunity Scholarship Tax Credit, just because it's included in one house's version of an omnibus bill doesn't mean it'll necessarily make it out into the full legislative omnibus bill that's then sent to the governor, which is another hurdle that an omnibus bill needs to pass. Not only has to be included in the legislature's omnibus bill, but has to be signed by the governor as well.
Yep, absolutely. And again, that's all part of negotiations, and that's why we never, here at MCC, we never give up advocating for something until we know that it's been, signed into law, because, it could come out in conference, or it might not get included in the Senate. We're confident that it will, but, that's why we ask people people out there to keep advocating for these things with their legislators to make sure that it does get included in the final versions.
And that could happen at 11:59 at night one night too, much like some pieces of legislation we've seen in the past that we were working on, included late at night in conference committee, and then passed into a full omnibus bill. So
absolutely,
vigilance of the legislature is always required, right?
That's what we do.
So for those watching, it's important that folks stay up on what's happening at the Capitol through our Catholic Advocacy Network, which you can join or become part of at mncatholic.org. Again, that's mncatholic.org. Again, our bill tracker keeps a tab on what's going on with individual pieces of legislation, but also our Action Center is a great way to take action and contact your legislators about these key pieces of legislation, including the Omnibus Tax Bill. So that was a good overview of tax bills. Next week, I'm sure there'll be more to talk about with the budgeting process and some of the other omnibus bills, but that's our show for this week. Thanks for watching. And again, to take action and to follow all these pieces of legislation, mncatholic.org. Thanks very much for watching, and we'll see you again soon.